right, welcome to WBPress.org's Gaming with a Purpose podcast. I'm Kimberly Orr, and with me today are Miklos and Starla Fitch of Our Family Plays Games on Facebook.
Yay!
Go check it out. Go check it out.
That's right.
We have an intriguing topic to discuss today. We're going to be discussing how can we use modern tabletop games as a way to connect people across racial and educational divides. So, Mik and Starla, first of all, thank you for being here with us today. And this is our, by the way, very first podcast.
Glad to be on it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Well, honestly, when I was thinking of who could I ask, your names came to mind first because I'm thinking, man, these are the folks that know where it's at and what's happening in the Houston gaming community. So I wanted to have you guys on first. First of all, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got involved in the board gaming hobby.
Well, I guess I'll start since my husband's looking at me.
I'm looking at her.
I got started in the hobby because of my husband and his love of games. He's always played computer games and video games, and he started really getting interested in board games. And we always played games with our son. We played the Monopolies and the Parcheesi's and Sorry and all that. And my husband somehow, I'm not really sure, you'll have to tell that story, how you fell into the modern board games. But once he took us to this gaming cafe, it wasn't a cafe, it was Express?
Express.
And we met Charles Washington, and he introduced us to a lot of games. We were hooked. We were totally hooked.
Yeah. And my name's Miklos Fitch, and I started playing board games at a young age. I forced my mother to get me some games from Walden Books. If those who know what Walden Books is, it's a long time ago. I'm an old guy. And there were
I'm not old.
Yeah,
he's old.
Yeah, I'm old. And we bought some Avalon Hill war games, and I played those by myself because I couldn't find nobody to play them with me, so I played those. And then I played some of the games that came along, King Kong, Bermuda Triangle. Those were back in the 80s, and I played those by myself sometimes, or my mother might play one or two games with me. Then later on when I met Starla, we played Monopoly and those games, and I was getting tired of those, and I said, well, it got to be something else out there. So I started researching. Then I found this little game called Forbidden Island. And I said, okay, that might be cool. So I brought that, and I found out Starla doesn't like co-op games. So I had to get rid of that game, and I found another game. I said, got to be something else out there. Then I found our gateway game, and that was Catan. And we started playing Catan, and we never looked back. So, and like my wife says, almost 200 games later, here we are. So, yeah.
So what are some of your current favorite games? What are you playing right now?
Current favorites, I don't know if it's not really current, but it's one of my favorites. That's Five Tribes.
Yeah.
Absolutely love Five Tribes. We're also playing Hansa Teutonica, which I love. Dinosaur Island.
Dinosaur Island, yes.
Those are some of of course my favorite is Splendor.
Yeah, of course.
I absolutely love Splendor. So
and then we like Cumbria. That's one of our new ones, Cumbria.
So there's quite a few.
We added that to our collection not too long ago.
But I like the old ones. Now I'm still into the Ticket to Ride and New York 1901. So there are games out there that I don't care if you have something new. I still want to play those games.
Yeah, we decided not to run after the
shiny new stuff. The cult of the new.
The cult of the new
right.
that everybody's running after. Like Wingspan. Even though we've never seen a Wingspan in Houston, I do.
Apparently somebody has it.
Yeah, somebody has it. Well, I saw there was one store that had one copy, and they put it out saying, we have this one copy, and we're not going to sell it. You're going to have to use your loyalty points to get it. Well, those loyalty points, it lasted for an hour. Somebody got it in an hour.
Wow.
And I said, well, that was just one in the wild that I saw. But, it's just crazy, let's run after those things. So we decided to let's just play what we have.
Right.
And also, if we find something new, like there's a couple of games that we have, like, what is that, Thebes?
We like Thieves.
We like Thieves. Thieves is an old one. Mm-hmm. And then also the Settlers of Stone Age.
Settlers of Stone Age.
And Stone Age.
And Stone Age. Oh my
God, we love Stone Age.
You know, great gateway game. So that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, and those gateway games, what we're discovering with what we're doing here at wbpress.org is to take those gateway games, a lot of them, that have some mechanics that force people to have to like engage with each other across the table. Trading games, and I'm sorry, Starla, co-op games that encourage collaboration. Yes. We find are very helpful when we're dealing not only with academic enhancement but with social enhancement.
Well, each one of those gateway games has a mechanism that brings you into, you know, the more, you know, complex games, and we love that because, you know, like when you get to a game like Terra Mystica, they combine a whole bunch of those gateway games, you know, mechanics into just one game, and you need those separate ones. You know, you need a worker placement here and a deck builder there. They kind of teach you those mechanics by themselves before you start throwing them all together.
To the more complicated games. Oh, good. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I hope that some of our listeners will start getting involved in the hobby a little more as they hear, look, board gaming is for everybody.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So again, thank you for being on the podcast. And I think also before we dive into the main subject, maybe we should define for some of our listeners what is an analog board game, what is a modern board game, what is a hobby board game. What do those things mean?
Well, I think what a modern board game is one that takes mechanics that are not seen in, you know, the games that, you know, everybody knows, the classics, you know, Monopoly,
the US
you know,
classics.
The US classics.
US classics. Yeah, very good.
You know, it's the Monopolies where it's just, you know, you throw some dice and you just move your little piece around, and then if you get beaten, you're out of the game. You know, with, you know, life is the same thing, things like that. Sorry.
Well, I think what you're saying is the US games are really so focused on luck.
Luck, yes.
The luck, the roll of the dice. Where the modern board games, there is a strategy. You actually have to put some thought process behind how you're going to win this game. So that's the difference. That's the real difference.
Yeah, because in Europe, classic board games, I mean, we can say, I think, that modern board gaming started in Germany and in Europe.
There, Catan is a classic there.
Exactly, exactly. Yes. And that eventually some of those mechanics made their way across the water, across the pond. And we've begun to incorporate more of that into the American market. But we still have the mass market, like stuff you can go pick up at Walmart.
For $10.
For $10, right. Hasbro, right?
Hasbro,
Parker Brothers, right.
Yeah.
And they're very limited in what they can do as far as engagement and mechanics and a richness in actually theme too.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, because I see so many people, you know, still playing, you know, the Monopoly, saying, "Oh, that's my favorite game." I'm like, "Oh my God, you know, there's so much better things out there," and you know, still playing Uno. And I'm like, okay, there's a little bit better, you know, player interaction than Uno out there instead of you know making somebody so mad at you because
you've doubled down,
you destroyed them with Uno. There's so many better games out there, so you know, we're trying to introduce.
Where
those.
If you lose, you can lose with dignity.
Yes.
There you go. There you go. There you go. So if someone was playing Uno, what game would you recommend to them?
Uno.
If they love that, take that kind of.
Take that.
That's a good question.
For two players, I would Fox in the Forest.
Fox in the Forest.
That's Fox in the Forest.
Very good.
Two-player. For, you know, take that, I would suggest as gateway.
Oh, what's one of my favorite? The two-player that we play all the time, and it's slipping my mind right now.
Jaipur
is very good.
Jaipur is good.
Yeah.
And one with take back is Clank.
Yeah, that's not really a card game. That's a board game.
That's a board game, but
it's a card game.
Yeah. But it's a lot of take that.
There's a lot of take that in there. Yeah, that's true. That's true. What is the big one? That's the pyramid building card game. You know, the big civ building game that has the pyramid of cards.
Is that I don't know. What
I'm
that
not
is.
sure because I don't think we have that.
Seven Wonders.
Seven Wonders. Yeah.
Seven Wonders.
Oh,
that's take back.
No, the Seven Wonders is fun. It's Seven Wonders Duel.
Duel. That's the one I'm thinking of.
Definitely
Seven Wonders
back.
Duel. Let's take that.
That one will make you angry.
Yes, it will.
No, I was just going to get that. Right.
And someone takes all the resources, and you're like, I don't have no resources. That's a mean one.
That is a mean one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I always appreciate y'all's perspective on games. And so I think let's go ahead and dive into the main topic again, which is building bridges across racial and educational divides using some board games and their mechanics, themes, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's identify the problem. I think that's always a good place to start with anything. So, what divisions and disparities do you see in education across maybe racial and socioeconomic lines? And this could be just anecdotal. What's been your experience in that? What have you seen as far as a divide or disparities in education?
Well, I think that with board gaming is that African Americans have not been introduced to these things, and I think one of the reasons is with money, because some of these board games you're asking folk to put a lot of money.
Right.
And, this hobby is not cheap.
Right.
And some of these board games can hit up to 50, 80, 100. My Gloomhaven that was $140.
Right.
A lot of African Americans are not going to pay for a game at $140.
I don't know of many people who.
I mean, I hate to always lay the sword on money. Because African Americans will buy what African Americans want.
Yeah.
So if the education part is there, where you know what these games are, the value and the benefit and enjoyment that they bring to you, you will spend your money as we do for our games.
Sure.
'Cause, I mean, the games we have, we can spend that money on other things, but because we love it so much, we decide that this is where we want to put our money. African Americans and other people of color will put their money where they feel they're going to get the best bang for the buck.
Bang for the buck.
And I think a lot of them they do not see, board gaming,
right?
As that, especially as adults, because they see that as the kids,
right.
the kids play that. Because I know we were at our, the church that we currently attend.
Yeah.
We were talking to the pastor, and the pastor said, "Oh, you guys play board games?" And said, "Yeah, we want to introduce board games." They said, "Well, we have a children's day coming up," and we're like, "No,
that's not what we're talking about."
Unfortunately, 90% of our games, children can't play.
Right.
So, we still have to let, people of color know that, hey, it's not just for kids.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just not for kids. And you can learn a lot from this. You can learn, economics. You can learn how to, get along. You can learn how to get past issues. It's a lot of things you can learn.
It's very educational because with our son who's 14, he started playing games with us probably at 8 or 9, and he started beating us at those ages after he really learned how to play.
Right.
Because one thing I know it taught him is how to be a gracious loser.
Yes.
And that was something he had to learn, and I'm proud of that.
Absolutely.
I just recently saw that this couple, this African American couple, they made a board game about being an entrepreneur, and but it was kind of like a Monopoly game.
Right.
And I was like, well, that's great that they did that, but I could show them
a ton
of games that go beyond just being an entrepreneur. How to run a company, how to keep that company afloat, and how to try to beat people in making a great successful business. It's a ton of games.
And I tell you, for me, one of the games, it's a hard game, but one that does that very well is Tesla versus Edison.
We had that.
Yeah.
We didn't fall in love with that one. That left our collection.
I mean, but that's the great thing about this hobby. There are so many games, and there's something for everyone. You can't just say, "Oh, I don't like board gaming because I don't like this game." Well, there are 20,000 other ones out there.
Correct.
You will find a dozen or more that you just love. You don't have to love the same game everybody else loves. There's so many. Where back when we grew up, if you didn't like Monopoly, Clue, you were out of luck because that was pretty much it.
That was it.
That was it. So here you have so much to choose from. There's something for everyone's taste. So
how much of a barrier? Because I know, Starla, you're not a great rules person. That's not your favorite thing. That's not your favorite part. That's Mik's thing.
Yes.
That's Mik's thing. So how much of a barrier are these more common complicated rule set for introducing games to new people?
Well, I'm going to be honest, and the crazy thing is in our household, I am the reader. I love to read books. Got a huge book collection. I'm a writer. So in education, both me and my husband are both college degreed. So even with all of those things being said, I don't like to read all of these rules. They're cumbersome. It's just, so I would defer to Mik because he likes to research the rules.
Right.
So he'll watch podcasts and he'll get online. He'll figure out all the nuances, and then he will bring that down to me to where it's like, okay, you got to do X, Y, and Z. That's it.
Right.
Because I just don't want to spend my time doing rules. And so for some people who you introduce them to a board game, I think that a synopsis may help, because if you throw a 4-page, 5-page, 6-page rule book in front of them, they're going to say, nope, I'm going back to something I already know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And if it was not for my husband, say, I'm going to take the time, I'm going to research it, I probably would have said no.
Said
too.
the same thing. Yeah.
Well, when you have, Starla, one time we met Chenier.
Chenier LaSalle.
Yeah, he's a designer of New York
1901.
And we met
right.
him, and he introduced us to his game before it came on the market.
Wow, that's awesome.
And he was explaining his game to me and Starla. He was telling us all about it. Starla stopped him and said, excuse me, hold up one second. Just how do you win? Just tell me how do you win. I'm like, the man is trying to explain his love, his baby, and you just say, how do you win? So she's not into the rules.
We have to be honest. I mean, after someone has given you 3 or 4 instructions,
right,
5, 6, 7, and 8, you've lost. Because
Correct.
we're still looking at 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
Right.
So we have to figure out ways to teach games where we can take it and break it down into the most essential parts. How do you start the game? What do you do to move your pieces? How do you win the game? And then after those things are understood, then here are the other things you need to consider when you're doing this in the game. And that's how it works best for me. Because when we're looking at rules, you've got 3 or 4 pages of rules. I'm not going to remember Rule 1 when you're on Rule 12. I'm just not going to remember.
Or some of these games have more than 2 or 3 pages.
I know. I'm just
20.
giving an example.
Yeah.
If you've got more than what I just said, then of course you're not going to remember. So someone has to take the time, and thank God for podcasts.
Yes.
Thank God for video podcasts where they show you how it's played. How it's played is great.
How it's
where
played.
you discuss
how it's played,
games.
Rodney.
Rodney.
So when they show you, when people discuss the games, what they think about them, give you an opinion, and that way you can make an educated decision on whether or not you want to buy that game.
That's the Dice Tower and
so
some
those,
of the others
awesome.
that Board Game Geek is a valuable asset, to tell you, do you want this game or do you want to deal with this game?
Yeah, they do a great service for the hobby because without that, I don't think I would be as interested, because I like sitting down watching groups play the game, so I have an understanding of what I need to do, and then we can get all the nuances of the rules later.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we live kind of in a golden age as far as being able to go on YouTube or Facebook and see games being played and explained and broken down to those elemental levels. But I agree with you, Starla. I think it would be helpful if more board game publishers had a player age that meant something.
Yes.
And like a turn example and just a synopsis at the beginning, as opposed to going, I have no idea.
Okay, I'm going to throw this out here now, and hopefully no one will steal my idea, but if they do, it is my idea. I really think that every game, when it comes out, should come with a video.
Yep.
You can go on to YouTube, pull up this video, and watch how it's played. Instead of us having to wait till some reviewer does it, every game should have a link to a YouTube video.
And what's so good about it, some have done that.
They've done that. Plaid Hat did that.
Yeah, some have done that, but I think all of them should, because Pandasaurus games with Dinosaur Island, we really could use that, especially for the 2-player game Dualosaur Island. But because sometimes those rule books can really kind of confuse you a little bit.
And there's technical language.
Technical
language.
And sometimes especially for the games that we play, the Euro games and things, the translation between one language to the other, trying to explain the rules, those kind of it gets kind of messed up sometimes in the rule book.
I can see that. Well, it's a worldwide hobby.
Yes,
which
it
is good.
Yeah.
So, having said all that, how do you think board games address things like community building? How do board games help us build community, or could potentially help us build community?
Well, I think the one thing it can do is bring people that you would normally never talk to, because that's the one thing that me and Starla, is faced with all the time in this hobby, because we're the rarity. We're the rare African American couple that's out there that go to a lot of these board game, conventions and things. And
I've never seen another African American couple.
That's true. We haven't seen
all the conventions we've gone to.
True.
I have yet to meet another married couple with children who play games as well.
Yes.
Now I've seen singles.
Yes, we've seen a lot of singles.
So
yes.
I would love to. So if you're out there listening, I would love to meet an African American couple who plays board games.
Yeah,
because we haven't met them yet. But we're always out there and we're always playing, and we sit down at the table and we talk. We talk and play with different people.
Right.
Some of the experiences are great, some of them not so great. But we expand our horizons. And we talk and conversate and learn new things, and I think that helps.
Well, I'm going to look at it from a different perspective, because when you mentioned earlier about when we mentioned to the pastor about playing games, and he said, "Oh, it's for children." He still allowed us. It was at a church picnic, and he announced, "Hey, we're going to have some board gaming in X room," and we had people come in there who had no idea what it was, and we ended up playing code names, and they had the best time ever, and loved it, wanted to go out and buy it the next day. And so it really built a sense of not familiarity, but we got a chance to know them because we sat there and played together, and they didn't want the gaming to stop. So it was a lot of fun. I think people don't socialize enough. And that game lets you be social.
Yes.
So you go to the church picnic and you're in your little group, and there's little families over here. Well, we got a chance to break some of those groups up, bring them together across the table with gaming, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And sometimes the theme helps you talk to people about different things and stuff. Like there's one, Agricola, which is about, feeding your people, growing your medieval form. That kind of makes you talk a little bit. Yeah. It makes you communicate, and it's a tough one.
It is.
You got to feed your people all the time. But different things like that, different themes and stuff that, you make you conversate and talk to people about things. And it's fun.
How do you think, speaking of theme and artwork either helps with the sort of racial and educational divide, or does it hinder? For instance, I think some games, they don't think about putting diverse characters in the box.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And or even scantily clad non-diverse figures in the box.
Well, the thing that we see, the one thing we always say in the different podcasts we're in, and we want to thank Stephen Conway of the Spiel that brought us on board that podcast as a contributor. We always say that representation matters, and he was really he really wanted to bring us on so we could really discuss that and talk about diversity in the hobby, because representation matters. And when you look at a lot of these board games, Black folk and people of color just not in
there,
them.
right.
Unless it's something themed like in China or Japan, or you might have an African theme, which some of those don't do very well. But that's the only time you see us. But if you have like a game in an urban setting, you might out of 100 white folk, you might get one black person or one Hispanic or one Asian. So that definitely needs to change.
Well, I really think that board game designers and companies who put out games, you're going to have to think beyond skin color and understand that this world is made of more people of diverse colors. And when we see ourselves in movies or in gaming, we appreciate the thought process, and that makes us a little more devoted to buy your product. When we don't see ourselves, for me, sometimes it can be like, well, you know what? They don't consider me, then they don't consider my money.
Yeah.
So people have to think, what does it hurt you if you've got 9 characters to make one Hispanic or one black or make a female, or it doesn't hurt you to do that because it's just a character. It's something you made up anyway.
Right.
And it brings that endearment from the people that you represent to your game. So you need to think about that in the future.
And it's really and it has to keep going because there's a lot of resistance. And I know that there was a professor that I talked to here and there. It's an African American. Well, he's Afro Latino, and he's a professor and he plays board games. Nice guy, William Garcia, and he put on the one of the board game forums talking about representation in games, and he got a lot of pushback from a lot of the Caucasian members there. They were kind of enraged. Why are we talking about this? This shouldn't be on there. We need to move past this. What are we talking about race for? And you guys just don't get it.
Don't get it.
They just don't get it. So we still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I was just about to say, even though I think we've made some progress, and certainly I think the Dice Tower has tried to
they have.
move some things along.
Yes.
There's still that trope out there that board gamers or hobby board gamers are middle-aged, white, geeky males.
And I would have to tell, the board game geek, they need to kind of come along with that too.
Yeah.
Because they're...
I agree.
They're a little bit, one color. So they got to come along.
So you mentioned just a little bit about designers, Starla. How could specifically designers help open up hobby board gaming to more diverse audiences?
Themes, and if it's going to be a theme that
and let me just interrupt something. Not always just an urban downtown.
Exactly. Just because you're going to put African Americans in it,
it
shouldn't be about rap. It shouldn't be about, urban, because we're everywhere in every spectrum. We're in education. We're in the medical fields. We're everywhere. So we just want to be represented. We want to see when you make those characters or when you develop your theme that you've taken into consideration that other people play your games than just white males.
Yeah. Right. Because, there was one, I did a podcast. Well, we did a podcast and we talked about, it was during, I think February during Black History Month. And I mentioned that, one theme is that Tesla versus Edison, they had Madam C.J. Walker in it from an expansion.
Right.
Now, what if you took a lot of those Black entrepreneurs and make a game out of that?
Right.
Because we have a lot of entrepreneurs that we could really put in there.
Inventors.
Because the game, I think the game Steampunk Rally has a couple of African-American inventors and a few other people of color inventors in there. How about you just kind of
Start there,
and bring some more on board. Yeah,
we just don't want to see the board gaming history be whitewashed, and male washed. Because we're talking about race a lot, but also women. There are a lot of women who love to play board games, and we want to be represented as well.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Well, there's always more to do, and again, one of the things that we're trying to do with our business is reach audiences that are underserved educationally, and doing that, we're introducing them to hobby board games.
Yes.
So, we're hoping that it's not a back door, it's a side door, I think, to help people see, hey, there's this whole world out here that your family can be involved in. So, Starla, why don't you talk about your Facebook site, speaking of families playing games?
Our family plays games, and I came up with that because our family does play games.
Yes, we do.
And we're such a unique group in this hobby because we have our 14-year-old son, and then we also have a 21-year-old daughter, and we all love playing board games. So we like to see more families play, and we don't see a lot of families. You see a lot of single males. They're there by themselves playing their games. Where are their wives? Where are their children? We went to Rice Alcon, and there are no real children coming. So our son didn't go. He went the first year. We went, this is our third year?
Third or fourth year.
Fourth year going to Rice Alcon. So we took him the first year. There were no kids there. And so he's like, well, I don't want to go back. So we want to see more families play games. And that's why we said our family plays games, to get other families involved. The educational value, the way it has opened up the mind of our son, who loves video games. And we like to break up his video game play by putting him onto board games.
Right.
He thinks in a totally different way, because video games are so fast paced. You run, shoot, jump. Where board gaming, you have to slow your mind down.
Right.
Yes, you do.
Utilize the thought process and say, okay, I need to strategize. I'm not just running and picking up stuff. I got to figure out how to, get to point A from point B from point A. So I just love it. And I think more families need to think about playing games with their kids things that'll help them develop educationally.
Yep.
We're also on Instagram too.
There you go.
Yes, Facebook and Instagram. Our family plays games.
Our family plays games. That's awesome. And that's a real concern for modern parents is how do I get my kids off of the devices?
Yes.
I think most families have sort of lost the let's eat dinner together war.
We have not.
We have not. We have not.
Dinner
Wow.
together every night, 7 days
Starla
a
has
week.
demanded that we always eat dinner at the dinner table every night.
That's just good.
Yeah,
That's
every night.
awesome.
Demand.
You demand.
But we eat dinner every day, 7 days a week.
Right.
Yes.
Unless someone's out of town, we're sitting at that dinner table together, and there are no devices at the table.
Right.
And even though my husband and my son try to break that rule, I have to get on them.
Sometimes.
We don't put devices at the table. I think the only bad habit we have is watching TV while we eat dinner. But we watch something that the entire family wants to watch. And then after that, we play board games, not every night, but we do like to get our son off the computer games. Mm-hmm. And at the table.
At the table.
And then we get a chance to talk and interact. Because
right.
when he's on the computer games, he's interacting with somebody probably in Canada, who knows. But here he's interacting with his family, and it's really nice to see.
And I guess that was my point. For families who have not been as successful as you at having dinner at the table every night, board gaming can do that.
Yes.
It can get the family around the table.
Yeah.
And the board game, and it's a lot of board games that they're not hard. There's a lot of games that they can play that are simple. Like Downforce. Downforce is not hard. It's a lot of gateway games, and what we mean by gateway is just games that are not as crazy as some other games out there. They're easy on beginners, and there's a lot of great ones out there. Corkazone and Ticket to Ride.
As far as our son, his favorite and his gateway that he fell in love with was King of Tokyo.
King of Tokyo, absolutely.
It has monsters, it's got dice, and he beats us all the time, and he loves it.
Yes.
And so kids love that. I mean, something with monsters on it, the little pieces, they can pick their monster, who they're going to play as, and he loves that.
Yeah, my granddaughter loves King of Tokyo. She's 5, and she can't play the game fully yet, but she loves to throw those dice.
The dice.
And go after the monsters. So absolutely. That's a great gateway game. So let's talk about some games. So there seem to be sort of a category or set of category of games that sort of lend themselves better to educational learning than others. And first of all, let me say, I'm not talking about, as you well know, but for the listeners, educational games, quote unquote, because the ones that I have seen dealt with, they're really badly designed.
Yes. Most of them are.
Most of them are badly designed. And so why not use what's on the market, again, as also a way to help introduce families and groups of friends to hobby board gaming.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So one of the games that I thought about that really facilitates social bridge building is Pandemic.
Now, that's one that we do not have in our collection.
You do not.
Because Starla does
not like cooperative games.
Right. So that's the one gateway that we do not have in our collection.
Right.
Yeah.
But I thought of it, and we do use it because it does have a diverse cast of characters.
Yes, it does.
Out of the box.
Yes.
And it's not part of the expansion, as you said earlier. And it says we can all work together to save the world.
Yes.
At the bottom of it. Right.
Now, there's one that I really do like. That's not so Pandemic is kind of crazy, but there's another one, Dead of Winter.
Yes.
And out of the box, they do have a lot of diversity in there from some of their characters. But Dead of Winter, you have to work together because zombies are after you. But it's it's a good game, and I like that. Yeah.
And for folks who don't know what that game is, that's a dystopian.
Yes.
Let's survive together.
We gotta survive because, and it's really you have to watch what everybody around you have to do because it's really the zombies is not the main thing. It's kind of like an added on because you have to. It's a traitor mechanic where there's someone in the group that's a traitor trying to destroy everything.
Right.
And you have to watch them. Yeah. You have to discover that traitor. Yeah.
Speaking of Hidden Traitor, so one of the games that we've used in a social setting, we did at a university experiment actually just a couple of weeks ago, was to take Werewolf.
Yes.
Which has that hidden traitor mechanic.
Traitor,
you have hidden werewolves, and the villagers are all trying to survive another night.
Yes.
And what we found in that social experiment was that people begin to other. In other words, people just sort of say, "Oh, I know that person's a werewolf." Well, why do you think that person's a werewolf? And they usually have no real basis for it other than I just feel like they are, or they look a certain way, or they act a certain way, and have no idea about who they are or what they're doing. And so we use that to open up a discussion about othering people.
Oh, that's really good.
That's really good.
And so you've played Werewolf, yes?
I've played Werewolf once.
You've played Werewolf once. Or any other Hidden Traitor games? What other Hidden Traitor games do you like? Or have you played?
Dead of Winter is the Hidden Traitor.
Yeah, that was a really interesting experiment that we did. We found there was a class of 60 young adults, and I just did a demo game up front. And it was a diverse group, all athletes, by the way. They were all athletes from the university. And it was amazing. The people that they picked as werewolves were not.
Yeah.
And we went through that discussion. Why did you think? Well, she smiled. Well, why? Because he had a cap on.
Yeah.
I play. There's another one, Resistance.
Resistance. Yes.
Yeah, that's another one.
Another good hidden traitor.
Another good hidden traitor game where you really have to. You kind of think about what that person is doing and what they're saying, and kind of like, wait a minute, I think you're the traitor. You're the traitor because you're saying something wrong. So yeah. So that if you extrapolate that out to real life, how many times do we look at someone and go, well, just because they look that way or act that way, then they've got to be. That's a lot.
That happens all the time, especially in the African American community with the police department. Not that we're traitors, but you looked a certain way and then you end up getting shot. Right. Or you ran a red light and for some reason you're getting shot. Instead of someone saying, "Let me talk to you and figure out what's really going on." They just shoot first, ask questions later. So, we're
or as an African American male that I've faced many times, getting on the elevator and you have, maybe some lady who's, white and kind of like, oh, let me go to the side a little bit, and and let me hold my purse a little bit tighter because this African American male, kind of big, got on the elevator. So we see that the other is there,
the othering,
and we see that now in this political climate, with the othering.
There's a lot of othering.
There's a lot of othering in that, like
people making assumptions with no facts,
no
basis
whatsoever.
In fact. Right.
Yeah.
And see, we're hoping we can help sort of short circuit that by getting into the schools and with young kids to say, hey, you don't have to label and other. You can learn to accept people where they are and who they are, and get to know them as people, as friends. Not make assumptions. So wow. Yeah. We got a long way to go.
One thing I always tell Mik, I say, you got to look at somebody from where they are. You've got to walk in the other person's shoes.
That's good.
And he knows that. I always say, before you start saying this, what about what they're thinking? What do you think they're thinking? What if that were you? And you got to think about that. You can't always just say, well, they should have done this or they should have done that. But what if that were you? Would you have done that, or would you have done something different? And if you take the time to just take that second or that minute to say, well, if that were me, would I have done the same thing? That will make you change your mind. And I always have to take a breath. If I'm upset with someone cuts me off, and when I'm driving, then I got to figure out, well, what are they thinking? Maybe they're on their phone and they just didn't see me. It's not personal sometimes. Sometimes we take things so personal, we internalize it so quickly. Oh, they're trying to hurt me. No, they're not. They've got another whole thing going on, and we have to consider that.
Yeah. And I think games, as you said earlier, can help us slow down. To consider some of those interactions.
To think and strategize. Right. And like I said, okay, if that were me, if he made that move, what if that was me? Would I have made that move? That makes you think. You have to think. People don't use their brains. They don't.
They react rather than respond.
Exactly.
And I think these modern board games can help us slow down enough to learn to respond and strategize. Exactly. Very good. So I want to end on a controversial note.
Okay.
I know in the pre-show we talked a little bit about there's a game out there by Academic Games called Freedom: The Underground Railroad.
Yes.
It is a historically accurate game, but nonetheless a controversial game. So talk to me a little bit, Mik, about maybe some of that controversy.
Well, Freedom, the Underground Railroad, it does put you in the mind of trying to help slaves come from the South into the North. And through historical issues that might happen through the card play, you're faced with different things that might happen during slavery time and the Civil War and things like that. When you're trying to get your slaves to the North, they're little cubes. You have these little cubes moving across the United States trying to get from the South to the North, and you have these black cubes, which are the slave catchers. And if the slave catchers catch up to the little cubes, the cubes go off the board. Starla and I don't, we don't have this in our collection, and it will never be in our collection because, slavery to us is not a game. Right. It's painful. And when those slave catchers, little black cubes catch up with the little cubes of the slaves and they go off the board, we know what happens. Those were our ancestors that, were basically killed, maimed, hanged, or whatever, are taken back to, the South. Right. So that's not a game to us. So we have passed on ever buying that game. Now, if some want to buy that who are not of African American descent, or if they're African American that just want to learn more about their history, that's all well and good. Maybe that can help you. And I've heard from a lot of people that has helped them. There's a great podcast called Shut Up and Sit Down. They really appreciated Freedom Underground Railroad and said that they really saw a lot of stuff that they didn't see before, and they appreciate a lot of things that they didn't know before with that game. And that's great. If that helps you, great. But just with me and Starla, it's painful. Yeah.
No, I can definitely see that.
Well, I can't speak about the game because I haven't looked at it. I haven't wanted to look at it, and I don't want to research it. So my husband's done the research, so he's telling you what he's learned about it. But from my perspective, if you really want to learn about slavery and what happened, there are tons of books out there. There are tons of movies you can watch. It is not a game. It's nothing to be trivialized in a game. To me, games are for fun and for entertainment. And if you get something educational out of it, that's great. And you will get something educational out of it. But for that particular thing, I wouldn't play with the Holocaust.
Right.
I wouldn't play with Japanese internment camps. And I think to me, it's very insulting. And I think it's demeaning for anyone to think that playing with slavery is a game. And if you want to buy it, more power to you. But I just will not support someone who thought slavery was a game. So that's my thing on it.
And there's another game out there that has great mechanics called Mombasa. But it's about how colonial Africa is basically raped of its resources. That's a game that will not be in our collection also, because we just can't, that's just something we don't deal with. Now, I know there's a lot of African American gamers that do have Mombasa because they like the gameplay or whatever, and that's on them. That's great. You can have that, but we see a lot of times we see past the game and we see the theme and we really look at the theme, and that one, we pass. I
just feel like you vote on whether a game is great with your dollars. If you buy it, then the designer felt like I did something great. If you don't buy it, they feel like I didn't do something great. I just think that voting with your dollars on something like Freedom is the wrong way to utilize your money when there are thousands, and I mean thousands of games out there that will give you the exact same mechanics and probably a lot more enjoyment. I know for me it'll be more enjoyment than Freedom. Vote with your dollars. And I know whoever is watching this, if you wrote Freedom or you designed Freedom, you're probably not going to want to hear this, but I'm telling you right now, I'm insulted that you decided to make slavery a game.
Yeah. Well, that's absolutely a valid perspective. On any of these games, I mean, I can think of, there are several games that are about the Holocaust or about the Nazi era or about Native Americans.
Yeah.
that some of the war games, some of the war games have some themes, I think, for Native Americans, especially American history, that are very difficult to manage.
And I don't think we should play with any of those, you know. And even with the one I mentioned, one of my favorite, 5 Tribes. And I've had some issues with reconciling the use of slaves, even the, I'm doing air quotes, no one can see that, the use of slaves in this game. And they're not African-American slaves. They are slaves from
the Middle East.
The Middle East. So, I have trouble with that.
But you know, there's a replacement deck.
The
fakirs.
Yeah, the fakirs. We have that.
Yeah.
But I just think that was wrong. So I'm happy that they decided to, hey, we're going to change that out for the replacement deck.
And I think sometimes, you know, some of the European designers don't really think about that. And they need to really think about the representation and really, you know, talk to people like, is this okay putting in the game
or not?
There's another game that we love and basically start us on our path to the more harder games, and that's Lewis and Clark. In Lewis and Clark, we kind of stopped playing that a little bit. We still love the game; it's still a good game, but you know, the French company said, you know, like, we have the word Indian in it, and that's fine. They explain why they have Indian in there, and that's great, and they have a lot of history in there. But all the Indians' meeples are all red. You know, you have the Indians that are red.
And they're being utilized,
like money. You know, you're trading off on those
things. And we haven't played Lewis and Clark in a while.
Yeah.
And when we got it, you start to really think about, what did we actually buy? It's an insult. And I don't want to insult. It's just not, it's just too many other games to play. You don't have to play something where I got to feel divided when I'm playing it. I don't have to feel divided. I want to be happy. I want to enjoy it. And there are thousands of games I can play that I just enjoy without even thinking.
So that takes us back to the discussion we had a little earlier about theme being so important. And representation in theme is not just about having folks in there that are not white. It's about how are those persons represented in the game thematically. That's definitely, and as you play educationally, to be aware of that in the communities in which you're playing. Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for that, because that's not something that I had thought all the way through to the end. So thank you for teaching me today. Well, thank you so much, Mik and Starla, for being here. This has been just a wonderful time. And thank you for being on our inaugural podcast. The very first one. Yeah, and we're calling it Gaming with a Purpose.
Gaming with a Purpose.
Gaming with a Purpose. Because, again, our goal is to get out there and introduce a new audience, but also help them learn a little something along the way.
Yes.
So thank you.
And we were glad to be here.
We've enjoyed it.
Yeah, we did.